What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and I'm here today with a great guest that I've been really excited to interview for quite a while, and that's Mathew Hubbard, who has been kind of taking over a lot of different, like, the scene. His deck's been popping off a lot, and he's been kind of the main pilot behind the Ogre Mask kind of swap deck. And so I first kind of became aware of you after we played together in the Control Players Unite tournament. Like the whole event, I was like watching your games to the best that I could, and like following it just because I was so fascinated by the deck. And so then finding out that you had that NAIC performance and stuff like that was really cool. So yeah, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always down to talk about the deck. Probably talk a little too much about the deck sometimes, but yeah, I've been really enjoying it ever since rotation. So
Yeah, absolutely. So just to get started, I was just curious, because since the Control Players Unite tournament is kind of like when I kind of learned more about you. So I was curious to know like how long you've been in the competitive scene, like what your kind of history with the TCG is.
sure, I'm a very competitive person, raised in a very competitive family. We're all we would play card games all the time. I started playing Pokemon TCG in middle school, so that was 2012, Black and White. Thinking like Mewtwo EX was coming out right when I started playing. I have a twin brother and a little brother, and we would all play constantly. We played for a few years. I got a little too busy with high school and college, so I took a break. So played from Black and White till about Sun and Moon, and then started playing again when Scarlet and Violet came out online, and started playing again in person 2024 rotation. So I've been back in person for about a year and a half almost.
Okay, cool. So with that time back and like coming back during the Scarlet and Violet era, like what kind of made this deck the deck you decided to kind of pick up and start playing with when there's so many other options?
So I usually only really ever liked playing rogue decks back when I played when I was a middle schooler, but I wasn't the greatest deck builder. I had one semi-deep run at nationals back then. I just barely whiffed top 32. I was a senior, so it was smaller. But ever since I got back into it, I pretty much have only played grass decks. So I played some Torterra, some Sinistcha, some Quad Ogre Pawn. But that was a deck with just 4 Teal Masks as the only Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried playing Ogre Pawn box last year when it came out, when you had the Ogre Mask come out with Twilight Masquerade, but it never really felt like it was powerful enough to do anything. And a few of the lines that it had, like going into 2 cornerstones, were very good into the meta, right? Regidrago, Palkia really couldn't do anything to you, but because every deck could just run a 1 or 2 of Canceling Cologne and completely negate what you were trying to do, it just felt like it had too many bad matchups.
Yeah, we got to bring Canceling Clone back, by the way. But no, yeah. So have you just kind of been like waiting for the meta to look right, or was there like a new card that kind of made everything more viable?
So I think it got some buffs throughout the year. I do think that until Canceling Cologne rotated, I never really considered it as like a serious contender. But when you have cards like Fez, that's a big buff for the deck. Latios, that's a massive buff for the deck. The list I based this off of was running 2 or 3 of Beach Court instead of Latios, and that it just feels so much better to be able to get Latios. And a really big buff is Terra Orb. That didn't come out until Surging Sparks. The fact that before, if you wanted to get them in your discard pile, you had to like chain Ultra Balls, and then you had like no hand. Whereas now, let's say I get Terra Orb, Earthen Vessel, Ogre Mask, and I have a Teal Mask on board, I can just Terra Orb for Wellspring, Vessel it away. That usually gets you a few energies. Teal Dance, attach, and then I can Ogre's Mask into Wellspring. It's just so much more fluid. The Terra Orb is such a good card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that kind of brings me into the main thing too that I also wanted to talk about is like for somebody who's never played this deck, never encountered it, sees your games or a video about the deck or whatever, wants to try it out for themselves, how would you kind of go about like recommending this deck to somebody? Like they want to pick it up, like how would you recommend learning this deck?
So I think the deck, it almost plays like several different decks in one deck. It's decently hard to learn. I think it's very rewarding once you learn it. You really need to know how you are going to approach each different meta matchup. For example, when I play against Golden Go, my goal is to get a board of 2 cornerstone ogre pawns that they can't really go through, right? And because my board's super small, if they're running Caesar, it doesn't really do any damage. But if I'm playing a deck like Raging Bolt, my goal is to turbo them off the board. So I'm suddenly filling my bench up as quick as possible and squawking and researching. So I think a lot of it is just kind of learning and finding lines that work. And I lost a lot of games when I was finding those lines, but then you start finding them and suddenly it goes the other way. So that's the main thing I would say. It has a pretty favorable matchup spread at the moment, so I think it's definitely got some very, very favored matchups to make it a little easier to learn.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next thing. Like, what do you think is kind of the general matchup view for this deck, like how it looks? And then also with the upcoming Worlds format, like, how do you think it plays into the Worlds format?
I think it's very good into the Worlds format. Now, I did get second place in a very large tournament last week, to the point where some bigger content creators than I ever thought would ever talk about my deck started talking about my deck. So maybe it warps the meta. I'd be a little surprised, but I think overall you've got Guardy is probably a little unfavored if they have Shaman. The lists that did well at NIC don't run Shaman, so I think that matchup's actually fine if you can Wellspring them early. But there's so many matchups where you're just heavily favored. You've got Arch, Golden Go, Zorwark, Zard, where you can just kind of go into 2 cornerstones and almost free win the game as long as you don't. Maybe if they're not running some weird, one prize or non-ability cards specifically for cornerstone, which most of them aren't. I think those matchups are heavily favored, 90-10 or better. I mean, I rarely lose to any of those. Joltik Box is similar. It's a little harder. You have to kind of thread a needle between pivoting your board, which is something that's very unique about the deck. You can do it either way, right? So against Golden Go, let's say I start Teal Mask, and my hand I get Terra Orb, Ultra Ball, Ogre Mask. Suddenly I can turn my Teal Mask into a cornerstone, and then I've pretty much won the game. I think the matchup spread's very, very good.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see more of this. I think that there's there's kind of a give and take where like you did really really well at multiple things, and so now that like people are jumping on it, I think there's going to be a lot of people attempting it. Probably, like we talked about, the fact that the kind of floor for this deck is like kind of high. It's a lot of trial and error, and so with that, I think it's going to be a lot of people picking it up and then putting it down. But definitely for the people that stick with it, I do kind of agree. Like the more I look at the deck, it's like what I find so fascinating about it and why I wanted to talk to you about it was that every time I look at the deck, like on paper, I'm like, how does this deal with X thing? And like just the more that I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is like there is a solution here. It's just like you said, there's a lot of like random lines you have to find.
Right. I think one of the things is that literally I have used every single basic Pokemon in the deck to attack at different points, and they've all been very good. Every single one, including Fez, including Bundle, including Latios. And especially Mew, Squawk. It really just depends. But yeah, the one problem with the deck is that since we're not running like Area 0, I just don't think there's space, really. You really have to watch your bench. I've had several games where I lose because I sit there and I think about, should I bench this, should I not? I bench it, and then it winds up being a brick on my bench. And that's the game. Or, especially with Mew or Squawk, for example, they're pretty squishy. And, I mean, everything in there is pretty squishy, but just being under 200 HP right now makes them even squishier into certain decks like Dragapult. So, you really want a lot of scenarios where I'm trying to my line late game winds up being like a board with some bravery charms and a legacy energy on somebody so that they don't really have anyone they can kill, and maybe the one guy they can kill is a one prizer. But I benched Squawk, or I benched Mew turn 1, so I lose if they have boss. So that's definitely a very high skill 4 part of the game, which I think you don't really learn until you get punished, which doesn't feel great, but I don't know how else to really map it out, I guess.
No, yeah, for sure. That's like one of the things that I thought was so interesting is like before we started like the actual, recording, like you were explaining Iron Bundle being a attacker for the Crustal matchup, which is something that like I would have never thought of because it's like I've never thought of even using Iron Bundle as an attacker.
Yeah, the problem is that he's pretty squishy, and it's pretty hard to find, in the Crustal matchup specifically, it's pretty hard to just bank on the fact that like, oh, I'm going to bench bundle, I'm going to hit Prism or Legacy, I'm going to double E-switch. Really, I want to probably put him down and attach an energy, but the second you do that, the Crustal player starts realizing what's going on, and I think some of them have started maybe getting burned by that. But the charm helps. I mean, that's probably the worst matchup for the deck right now. You can go into corners. The bravery charms really help with that matchup, but it's a pretty cursed matchup.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I'm
seems
hoping
like
it
the
falls
roughest.
off, but I think it's probably the worst. That's definitely unfavored. I'll win sometimes if I blow them off the board, or if I can hit some really crazy cornerstone chains while they're not really hitting me. Maybe I penny up a corner with a charm after they've hit it for 240 or something like that. But it's a pretty rough one for sure. You have a few attackers who can hit them, but sometimes you prize things or you just get bad opening hands. So
Yeah. What do you think this deck, like, now that we have all the new cards and stuff like that going into Worlds, like from Black Bolt and White Flare, do you think there's any new cards outside of Prism Energy that kind of improve this deck?
I thought about it. Not anything massive. I don't think any of the supporters. I mean, Hilda doesn't really work for the deck. Bangle doesn't work for the deck. I looked through all the basics, and I don't really think any of them fit quite well enough. I considered maybe Reshiram or Zekrom would be good, but I don't think you really can bank on attacking with them, and they seem kind of bad in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's any massive Pokemon in the deck. I've thought about, especially with Tool Scrapper and with how much Jamming Tower I started seeing now, due to some other decks, Golden Go and a few other decks relying on the new tools like Air Balloon. A lot more people started playing Jamming, especially Dragapult. And at that point, it's like, I've considered cutting the charms for some other cards, but I still think it would probably just be like maybe another Stretcher and a Stretcher and another Penny maybe, but it wouldn't be anything too crazy. I don't know, maybe a tool. I've thought about maybe a Tool Scrapper, but I don't feel like the deck really struggles with other person's tools very much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Prism Energy is a pretty big buff though. Like a really big buff. It was very annoying, and I had several very embarrassing games where the worst for me was when I would have like Grass Energy Legacy on a Teal Mask, and I would attach a Luminous and try to swing. Happened several times. Didn't feel great. There's also a lot of times where you just happen to have all of your Prisms or formerly Luminouses in your hand, and say you're charging up Wellspring, you put one Luminous on there and you can't do anything else, whereas now I can put that Prism on there, next turn, put another Prism, and then feel fine researching and hitting an E-switch and then shuffling those Prisms back. It feels so much better.
Mm-hmm.
The Prism Energy is such a massive buff. I didn't think it would be that big of a buff. It is a very massive buff for the deck. It feels very nice.
Is there any stadiums you would want to run? Because as I'm looking at the list, I don't see there aren't any in there, and I'm not sure what I would run. Like, have you considered Area Zero or anything like that?
Area Zero is probably the only one I would run. I thought about running it. I tried running it. Especially, I should mention that when I took this to Atlanta, I took it to NAIC, and then I did some online tournaments. And in Atlanta, I don't know what I was thinking. It's probably 5 cards different from the list, but the 5 cards that are different are like there's no Clefairies in there, and Hearthflame was in there. And what I learned from Atlanta, I played Cirrus Jones, who got top 4 with Dragapult, and a lot of my players at locals just didn't really know what the cards did. So my way of dealing with Dragapult was they Phantom Dive me, and I Ogre's Mask into Hearthflame and swing them for 400. Well, Cirrus knew that was a card, I think, and she played around it, and I lost. And I was sitting there looking at my hand, and I was like, man, if I had Clefairy in the deck right now, I would win the game, but I don't. It's just not a card I'm playing. So I put those in. After I put those in, I really started thinking about playing Area Zero, but I tried it, and it just felt like I was cutting good cards, and Area Zero, it's just not... A lot of the decks where you want Area Zero in play, they play Area Zero, so they give it to you for free, which is very nice. And a lot of the decks where you don't want it in play, they don't run it. So I don't know. I mean, the only stadium that really hurts me is Jamming Tower, and maybe Neutralization Zone. Corner can hit through Neutralization Zone though, so it's pretty much just jamming. And I think I'm just fine occasionally getting Jamming Towered. Like I said, I think I'd probably drop the tools before I started running a stadium bump.
Yeah, that's the only other card that I was curious about is we have, grass, the fighting, and the water, but we don't have the Heartflame. And I was like, well, I don't think it really does anything, but it'd be fun to see it.
Yeah, and I bought like the matching SIRs from Twilight because I love those cards. They look like the mosaic stained glass, and I thought it looked so pretty having the full set. And I was probably a little too attached to Hearthflame, just because he does help in a few matchups, but he's just very easy to play around. And I think it's a real shame they only gave him one attack that really synergizes with the deck. The triple fire energy attack, like I'm never actually using that, and it would make me, even if I could, it would make me discard all my prisms. Like that, it's terrible. I don't know. I wish they'd given him like a small, like 1 or 2 energy attack. Not like Sob, because Sob is very good. Sob is probably one of, if not the best attack in the entire deck. But yeah, it's a shame that he's not better.
Yeah, that is sad.
After NAIC, a lot of Japanese people hit me up on Twitter saying a lot of funny things about how I left Hearthflame out in the cold, or dropped Hearthflame, or killed Hearthflame, and it just had to be done. I think Hearthflame is actually the worst card in the entire deck to get as a starter in your opening hand. Like, he never does. It was so bad. Like, it's just a brick. You're never attacking on. You can't even if your opponent's not doing anything, and you put 3 energy on Hearthflame, he's not doing any damage until they swing into you. It just felt so bad. Like, I had to cut him.
Yeah, that's rough. That being said, how do you what's the response been for you since you have kind of had the success you've had with the deck? So like post NAIC and also like post the Smart tournament and stuff like that. Because I know like on my end, I saw like a bunch of people making videos on it and all that kind of stuff, but I'm curious what that was like for you.
Yeah, it's been a pretty slow ramp up. Like I said, I've been playing it since March. I did pretty well with it at locals, won a few challenges. I made top cut of a few cups. I felt like the deck was very strong, and most people have no clue what you're playing. They think you're playing Terravox, they think you're bricking or something. So I was doing very well, and then at Atlanta, I lost both of my win-ins to day 2. And I was so sad. I was like, dang, I almost made it to day 2 with my own deck. Oh well. Then at NAIC, I made day 2 and had an incredible day 2. Game 1 of day 2, it was just time rules. I was very far ahead on board state, but we didn't finish game 3, so it was a tie. And the other 3 games, I had the Crustal Iron Thorns game against one of my friends I talked about, and the other 2 games, one of them couldn't hit Cornerstone, so he scooped it up when I got 2 corners. And the last game was against Rowan Stabenow, who's obviously an incredible player. And I was very nervous because it was for cash. And game 2, I drew 7 off of Squawk on accident, got a DPL, lost that one. And then game 3, he Iono'd me to 2. And it was Boss's Ogre Mask, which is exactly what I needed for game. Which is very unlucky for him. But after that, some people talked about it, which was nice, and I got cash, which was unexpected and very nice. But I think it was kind of seen as like, oh, that's cool. And then this past week, when I got second in this smart tournament, it really blew up, which has been quite crazy for me. Seeing how many people are very interested in playing it now has been really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, it was during the CPU tournament that I was like, look, I was in it and I'm like, oh, I wonder what like everybody's playing, and I saw, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I was like, what am I looking at? And at first I'm like, this seems like, just at a glance, I'm like, this seems like kind of ass. And then like I was like, oh, he's just winning like every round. I'm like, what is happening here? And then like the more that I'm looking at it, I was like, wait a minute, this dude is a genius. Like I was like, hold on, he's playing 5D chess over here.
Well, I think the fact that it doesn't have a good consistent way to tutor cards out, like Noctowl, for example. Like that was a big thing people always mentioned. Like you should put some Noctowl in the deck. I just think the card, like with Noctowl, I do think you're forced to put Area 0 in. And then, I just don't think Terrabox is as good of a deck. You just have too many liabilities. I hate relying on Noctowl. I played a tournament on Noctowl. I don't know. I can't do 9 rounds of Noctowl thinking all day. I just like a deck where I still prize check with this deck. You still have several ways to search with all these ball search cards, but after that, it's basically you draw like crazy. Teal Dance's crazy draw engine, Mew Fez. It's kind of outrageous that you can get away with a Mew Fez draw engine. And then Research obviously is a broken supporter.
Yeah,
so I kind of just always find everything. But yeah, it's a super fun deck. I mean, I definitely draw a lot of cards, and that's how you find things.
Yeah, can't complain there. By the way, also, just because it came out the same day that we're recording this, we will have Boss for the foreseeable future. So that's another card that's just not gonna go away.
Oh, see, I was thinking about, not to get ahead of myself, but I was thinking about rotation, and I was like, well, you lose a lot. I thought it's also worth noting that Boss got confirmed. So did Energy Switch and Ultra Ball, which are 2 very big cards for the deck. Now, I think if Nest Ball rotates, it will still be very rough. I run 4 Nest. It's like, it's just, I'm running a full basic deck. Of course, it's a broken card, but it gives me some hope that maybe it'll survive rotation. But they announced a lot of other crazy cards too. Forest of Giant Plants. I'll have to try out something with that.
Yeah, dude, I was talking about it with some people on Discord earlier, but like that, all the stuff they announced for that set literally made me like, I was like, this set kind of sucks, into like, this might be the greatest set ever. Like overnight.
It's pretty crazy because I think I was in the same boat, until the last week or so, because I think the Meganium they announced
that
a
thing
few
is
days before,
cracked.
I was like, okay, Meganium Teal Mask is a deck. I won't know how to build it until it comes out. Then the Forest of Giant Plants is announced, and it's like, all right, I will definitely look into building that. Ogrebox could still be strong. I do think part of the reason Ogrebox is strong is because you have so much agency over, all these different angles and lines you can do, board states you can force. But I definitely wouldn't turn down some Meganium, smacking with Teal Dance for 400 damage with like 5 energy. Sounds really fun because that sounds like I could kill Dragapult and Guardy for once, so that'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, that's an insane combo. Like, I don't know what they're thinking with that one. And it's really funny too, because I literally had a friend like a night before it got announced, talking about how we were like, oh, Feraligatr was a thing and it went away, now Typhlosion's the big thing. And he was like, it's finally time for Meganium. And I was like, you're an idiot. Like, there's no way that's good. Like, they never make good Meganium cards. And then all of a sudden, the next day, I got put to looking like a fool.
Yeah, like I said, I really like grass cards, so I like all the grass starters. Meganium is definitely one of my favorites, though, and I agree with you. Meganium has had like very few good cards. There's some interesting ones, but it's been a while since Meganium's had a good card. Maybe like Meganium Prime with like, I think that has the Venusaur, Mega Venusaur's ability, but I don't even know if it was that playable back then. But with Forest the Giant Plants, Bug Catching Set, Teal Mask, just being able to drop Teal Mask from hand, Teal Dance, and attach and swing is so broken. You don't need an E-switch, which I don't know. It's broken. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's about to go insane. And then the fact that you can e-switch is like you can theoretically move 3 energy on. Well, you can have the equivalence of 8 energy on like turn 1, essentially, like theoretically speaking, or once you have your Meganium. So I guess it would be turn 2 because you'd need the stadium.
Yeah, there's definitely some funny things you could do with that. And it's not just on grass mods. So if I was to put that in Ogre Box, it would be, I could put Sparkling Crystal in the deck, attach 1 grass energy to Wellspring, and use Torrential Pump every turn for 1 grass. That sounds pretty broken.
Yeah,
But
it's insane.
yeah,
Also,
I'll have to see how. I'm really interested in the actual translation of the Stadium card. Just I've seen a few different ones, so I'll have to see what the rulings wind up being.
yeah, I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be super, super powerful. But that brings me into, I just want to wrap this up with some community questions really quick. One of them was how you kind of see this deck going into rotation. So we definitely got more information on that, thanks to that E-Switch and all that'll, be around. I personally believe that Nest Ball will stay. I feel like they try to keep these very generic cards around and then get rid of things like Earthen Vessel, and like I feel like Terra Orb will go away because it's kind of a more of a like
Mhm.
you know like
Well,
specialty card, but I feel like the generic stuff stays around. So like we'll lose Night Stretcher eventually.
I agree. But the cards are looking at losing to rotation now are mostly just. I mean, there's several big ones on here. The deck will need to be rebuilt still because you lose Squawk, you lose Bundle, you lose Mew, and then you probably lose Iono and Research. I'm assuming Research is rotating. I think Iono will as well. And then you lose Earth and Vessel, and those are all very good cards in the deck, especially the Pokemon you're losing there. Those are all incredibly powerful one-ofs. So there's got to be some way to fill that void. If not, I don't see the deck being playable if there's not like a clear replacement to some of those cards. The amount of I'd say there's a pretty good chance that when you play the deck, you'll get a bad hand and Squawk, and then you get a good hand. And if you can't do that, I think the deck's a lot worse. Same with Mew. I think Mew is just very versatile, nice draw engine. Bundle gets me out of a lot of situations, so I'll have to. I mean, who knows? Because there's a few more sets that would come out before rotation, obviously. So maybe there will be some replacements, but I'm not trying to think about it too hard yet.
Yeah.
Just enjoy it for now,
I think that we'll lose Iono and we'll keep Research just because they always do a research equivalence. My theory is that any supporter that's named will stay. Any that's like a character will go.
That's fair. I think the new Lily's Determination card's also very strong, but I would, if I had to cut all of my, like, you need some type of hand disruption in the deck, for sure. There's a lot of games where maybe you missed a turn somewhere earlier and I need to make up for it with an Iono. I think every deck and format can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it will need to be, I mean, if there's no hand disruption supporter at all, I just find that hard to believe. I think that game sounds miserable to play with no hand disruption supporter. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what they wind up printing. I think Judge also rotates, so
That was going to be my thing. I think we get Research and Judge back because they're just generic.
yeah, maybe. They've reprinted them with the same regulation mark though, so I was almost thinking that they wouldn't. But who
Yeah.
really knows what they're cooking up over there? Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see. One of the other questions I got was a simple one, but one that I think is very important. Is what do you recommend? Like, if you're playing this deck, do you want to be going first or second? I would assume second.
Yes, I always pick second. I when I went to Atlanta, I had the mindset that I was gonna pick first, and that was just so troll. Like I don't even know what I was thinking. Especially in the Badoo Frillish meta or TM Evo meta, um, going second's just so good. Especially because I can attack before the opponent gets to play supporter. There's a lot. I in the tournament I played today, I won 3 games because I wellspring them turn 1 and won the game. So going second is very strong. Now the weird thing is, I say I wellspring them to win the game. I pretty much only go for wellspring turn 1 if I win the game off of it. Otherwise, you're kind of really far behind. But yes, I've said I need to make a list of like 5 to 10 FAQs about the deck that I get, and picking second is on that list for sure. Right up there with no, Lily's Pearl will never be in the deck.
Lily's Pearl. That card's
Everyone
troll.
asks about it. Everyone asks if I've thought about it, and I'm like, you don't have a way to search it. It's only good on one Pokemon, and they're like, but you could put Legacy and Lily's Pearl on Clefairy. Well, especially with like Dragapult or Monkey Dory, like if they knock it out that way, they still take 2 prize cards, and now I've wasted 2 cards on them doing nothing. So I don't know. It's up there. I always say no, and same with Briar. I think Briar's not a good card in the deck either, especially with Legacy. It's kind of anti-synergistic there. So, but yeah, I'd pick second every time, no question.
Absolutely. Now I'm curious what else is on that FAQ.
Yeah, it was mostly go second, no Briar, no Lily's Pearl, no Area Zero. Although Area Zero, like I've experimented with, and people ask about the basic Psychic. Azul was actually asking me about the basic Psychic. You wanted to put a 4th Prism in the deck? I think the basic Psychic it's like impossible to understate how good I think it is in the deck. Just because it suddenly turns like Nest Ball, Vessel, E-Switch into a Clefairy play because I can pull the Psychic. And so you can Vessel for it, you can Energy Switch it, and you can Night Stretcher it. It's so good. And it works on, obviously, Clefairy, but also Latios. And it's just incredibly solid in the deck. I would never cut that card. I've tried it without it. No. Then I get a hand where I have Clefairy if I have the Psychic Energy in deck, and I lose to Raging Bolt, and it makes me sad. So that's another one on there for sure. Got to keep the Psychic in there.
Yeah, I was also wondering that, but then the main thing is you're like, when I attack with everything in this deck, and I was like, well, I guess it's there for Lottie as well.
Yeah, so before Prism Energy, one of the reasons I put it in was because of Maractus going up. And even though I run the 1 penny, let's say, I've already used it, and they surprised me with the Maractus, it felt really bad just to not be able to attack with Latios because I couldn't put 2 rainbows on it. Obviously, you can do that now. I still just think the Psychic gets so much value out of... I've had a lot of games where I win it because I can Night Stretcher my Psychic back and hit with Clefairy. Clefairy is probably one of the best attackers in the deck, especially turn 1. It's very good into a lot of decks, even if it's not hitting for super effective damage, just to clean up their squishies. And then they're kind of killing something you don't care too much about. So you can charge up your ogres and get those all set up while they're dealing with this Clefairy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the last things to ask is that as someone who was able to make their kind of rogue kind of pet deck into something actually viable and successful, what would you kind of recommend to other rogue players out there that want to kind of find a way to make their deck work?
Yeah, sure. So, I've definitely made a lot of really bad decks over the years. I just have a lot of fun, like, making the deck and theorizing about it is, like, half the fun. So, make sure to enjoy that. But also, I think a big part is, being really honest with yourself about what's working and what's not. and not being too attached to cards. Like I mentioned Hearthflame, because I wanted to be like the cool guy running all four Ogre SIRs, and Hearthflame's just bad. Another thing I would say is to get feedback from, some good players that you know. So some of my local players, especially and friends, especially one Justin Blanchard, he really helped me with the deck. You know, a lot of people maybe don't want to talk about rogue decks because they're trying to test meta decks that they're going to actually play against in a tournament, which I understand. I never want to make someone spend their testing the night before playing against Ogre Box. I'm like, I'll go play by myself over in the corner. But yeah, several of my friends gave me really good ideas. So, a lot of people at my locals would be like, have you tried this or have you tried that? Which, like I said, I guess, my commandments about Lily's Pearl and Briar, but I did test those cards because people recommended it. Same thing with Penny, and I was like, oh, wow, Penny's incredibly good in the deck. And I wouldn't have put her in there without someone else recommending it. So I think just getting a few other people's opinions is really nice. And especially in the world of online tournaments where we have all this data, obviously, if you're building a rogue deck, you can't go look at data about the deck. Like, I wanted there to be Ogre Box data for so long, but there's just not any. So I would kind of have to notice, like, man, these matchups seem really rough. Dragapult and Raging Bolt were really rough before I put any Clefairies in the deck. And I was like, well, this card would help with that. So I tweaked it a little bit. I think this is probably the 15th or 16th iteration of the deck. And this is the one that's done really well. So, I think part of it's just patience as well.
Yeah, man, that's super cool, and it's really fun to hear. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this. So if anybody wanted to kind of find you, follow you, whatever, like all that kind of stuff, where would they find you?
Sure. So my username on most things is dahubs901, DAHUBS 901. So that's what my Discord is, and that's what my Twitter is. Some people have been requesting me to make a Metafy on the deck, so I've been working on that, which will be under the same name probably. I'll probably link it on either my Twitter or my Discord or both. But yeah, that's where to find me. We'll see if I make a YouTube channel. I think I'm a little far out from that, but
hey, man, it'd be cool to have you on here.
Have to put up another really good IRL event first.
Are you heading to Pittsburgh?
I will be at Pittsburgh, and I do think I'm probably going to run this since it will still be Black Bolt White Flare meta. Sadly, I have plans for Milwaukee weekend, but I think I'll also be at Las Vegas, so that should be pretty good. But I'm excited to see how the World's meta is. I did not get my invite just because I did not do well enough at my non-Ogre Box regionals I went to. Those were not great. Not quite good enough, but it was my first season back, so I wasn't stressing too hard about it. My main goal was to make a day 2 for the season, so I achieved that. But I'll be interested to see, especially if any like Japanese players take this to Worlds, how they do. Because I know a lot of testing groups have started including it, which feels surreal, but I'll be very interested to see if the top players what they can cook up with it.
Yeah, man, that's super cool, and I'll definitely I'll hit you up and I'll see you at Pittsburgh because I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, sounds good.
But yeah, man, that's awesome. For anybody who is interested, I'll leave his Twitter down in the description. So definitely go and give him a follow. It's a super cool deck. I'm really happy to see it kind of perform and also kind of take the Pokemon world by storm a little bit. It's definitely very cool to see, and I love whenever anyone can kind of make their own thing popular. So I definitely wanted to use the tiny platform that I have to be able to kind of show some extra, some love to the list.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.